The International Women's Day, celebrated annually on 8th of March, traces its roots back to the early 20th century. Since its commencement in 1911, the day has been commemorating the ongoing fight for women's rights and also equality. Over the years, it has become a focal point for advocating women's suffrage and then addressing issues like workplace discrimination, among others. The UN officially recognized the day in 1977, emphasizing the global significance of women's rights. Today, the day has been serving as a platform to celebrate achievements, raise awareness and promote gender equality worldwide. To talk more on where we are with women's rights, joining us now here in our studio is senior journalist and women's rights advocate, Mrs. Namrata Sharma. She is also the Vice President of South Asian Women in Media for Nepal and also an advisor at the Center for Investigative Journalism, Nepal. Welcome to Kantipur News.
Thank you, Sarah. First of all, a very happy International Women's Day to you.
Thank you
and
so
via
much.
your show and Kantipur, I would like to wish all the audience a very, very warm International Women's Day.
Thank you so much. I want to start with the basics. In present context, what do we mean when we say women's rights and gender equality?
Actually, like in the present context, gender equality and women's rights, to some extent, is almost the same as it was when for the first time via a labor movement, in New York City, about 15,000 women marched to demand for better working hours, better pay, and also voting rights. Now, if you look now in today's world, many women, many citizens all over the world do have labor rights, do have better working hours, do have voting rights. However, there are many countries where whether the law permits or not, they are deprived of these rights too. For example, I want to take you to Afghanistan. Like recently I keep getting connections through our journalist friends who are living outside of their country or some who are also inside, keeping on asking me, Namrata, can you do something? The situation is getting worse and worse. Imagine the overall human rights of women in that country has been stripped. And we've had human rights declaration for 75 years. The UN is there. All these so-called democratic countries and powerful leaders all over the world who supported and said that they brought democracy back in Afghanistan. Where are they now? I want to ask that. I want to ask that on behalf of my Afghanistan sisters, They are completely stripped of their rights, you see. And if you come to Nepal, I'm just taking a quick step, Nepal also now has a right where same-sex marriages are approved. It's legal to get married, and there are a couple of people who have done that. But if you go to nooks and crannies of Nepal, although we have all the rights, we are still seeing cases of rape increasing every day. There are situations where farmers, people who are deprived of being able to access rights given by our constitution and our government, marching from far west to the capital city to attract the attention of the policymakers so that they are saved from deprivation of the land being taken away, you see. So, like if your question, although it looks simple, it has you have to unpack a lot to get meaning out of it. In some situations, we are in the same situations. In others, we are way ahead. Like for example, we have reached the age of digital age now, right? And we can get so much information and so much services at our steps, at our fingertips also, right? But these very systems have now also become other forms of crime, and the majority of the brunt is faced by women. So that's where we are. I think there is a lot for us to celebrate because at least a majority of the countries, including Nepal, has a lot of laws which are very favorable to the marginalized, the socially excluded, and particularly women and girls. But accessing that right is very difficult. then when we talk on a global level, there are countries like Afghanistan and other countries where complete human rights of women are stripped.
True. This reminds me of a story that came from Afghanistan after the Taliban takeover. A woman who used to work as a government official had to leave her job.
Yes.
And then she had to make do doing household chores in somebody else's house. She had to make a living that way. So it's ghastly what's happening in there. I'd like to go to a report by World Economic Forum.
Right.
They had released the gender gap report, saying that it's going to take another 131 years
Absolutely.
to achieve the gender equality, gender parity.
Yes.
Is it worrying? It's worrying, right?
It's very worrying, it's very alarming, and that is the reason why I say, you know, like even after a century has passed since International Women's Day is being celebrated, and also like 75 years since the Human Rights Declaration has been celebrated, and the world is reaching the so-called peak of civilization. I mean, imagine gender disparity to end, it will take 131 years more. So where are we, you know? So this is very worrying, definitely.
You talked about making strides in women's rights, especially in our country. Our constitution has ensured a lot of rights for us. Social justice, rights against discrimination, equality. How is the overall overlook of women's rights status in our country, especially when it comes to representation issues?
Right. Actually, Sarah, you know, like we must give credit to the fact that, you know, in the quest of overthrowing the monarchy in this country, there has been lots of people's movement and also underground, you know, civil unrest, Maoist movement and all that. And at the time where the left movement was dying all over the world, in Nepal, the red flag came up and there was a lot of unity between the left aligned parties and also Nepali Congress and all, and they brought together restored democracy in 1990. And as I just told you a little while ago, actually my journalism started then, you know, like as soon as democracy was restored in Nepal. So since then and now, you know, that was the time when press freedom was established for the first time. The right to mobilize together, protest, everything started then, right? So if you look now, and if you compare to the situation in South Asia, Nepal is the country which is cited to be, Nepal and Sri Lanka, and even then more Nepal, a place where civil societies can voice their agenda freely, and even people from different other South Asian countries prefer to come here because it's easier to get a visa, it's easier to mobilize, easier to actually host, you know. Recently the World Social Forum was hosted here. But our neighboring countries, there are lots of restriction, even in the so-called biggest and oldest democracy like India, you know. The people are arrested, raided every day without any notice or reason. So that way we are in a very good situation. We can protest. We can, if you look at the things that I write, you know, like I question the leaders, I question everybody, and we can do that. And then now coming to the rights that has been ensured by our constitution and also the government of Nepal over the years, it has become very much proactive, pro-women and pro to all those marginalized people who did not have access to these kind of laws. That is true, we have got. For example, the fact that we have proportional representation and first past the post, those both electoral system, the government has a provision that you have to have 33% women representation, right? So whether you like it or not, the different political parties have to do it. Unfortunately, what happens when the election time comes is the stereotype thinking of giving all the key places where the party is likely to win in the first past the post goes to men. And in the proportional, what happens? Proportional is actually solely to make sure those people, those citizens of the country who do not have access to rights, who do not have a place to voice about their rights, get a place there, right? So I'll just tell you very recently in the last election that Nepal had, What happened is there were a couple of women leaders from different political parties who wanted to contest through the first past the post, and it was easy for them to get the ticket because they were related to other political leaders in those parties. But at the end, due to different controversies, they had to be pulled out. But what happened later on, their names were also included in the proportional referendum. So what happens is, somehow or the other, the political leaders know the nooks and crannies where they make sure that they get what they think they should for their own power, their seat and the political party. So unfortunately, although all these leaders, you know, like I want to share with you, Sarah, because you were not probably even born at that time, when these people used to come for the first time after restoration of democracy in 1990, I remember when I met Oli for the first time, there were, I mean, I interviewed all these people. They were really young people with passion for the country to oust the monarchy and move Nepal into democracy. But now, most of our political leaders are mired into controversy, into like corruption issues, and definitely people are pointing fingers at them that they have not been able to lead the country well. Why does that happen? I think they have resorted to petty personal interests rather than the interest of the people. And that's what I would like them to reflect on 2024 Women's International Day, you know. Like, it's because of all these political parties, Nepal did get 33% reservation very not easily, but faster than many other countries in the world. International Women's Day has been a holiday for women, although you and I are working, that's a different thing. But, you know, like, so these things are there and we have to give them credit, but they need to sit and reflect today as they celebrate this day on actually where are they in really bringing the marginalized people and people deprived of their rights. Just making laws is not enough. How to implement them is there, you know. And what I feel, just before, I think I'm speaking too much, but I just want to say one sentence before I forget, is, you know, this whole Nepalima ma priti satatmak soch bhancha, okay? The whole patriarchal value system is so ingrained. I see that ingrained even in all these politicians and political parties. And that needs to be wiped off.
I want to draw from your own recently published article. You've mentioned that almost 18,000 women and girls were raped in the last 10 years. Based on the Nepal Demographic Survey, Health Survey of 2022, 23% of women aged 15 to 49 have experienced physical violence since the age of 15, and 8% have faced sexual violence.
Right.
Where are we falling short in controlling this situation, this scenario, and improving it?
Yeah. So, right. And that was the data from the Nepal police. And it also states that every year there's an increase of 20% in rape cases. You know, they have documented that fact. So again, coming back to the sexual violence issue, while you know, like in 1990 when democracy was restored, there were hardly any laws in Nepal. You know, there was no domestic violence law, there was no right to abortion, you know, and there were there weren't any laws that were very you know, like there was a complete disrespect in the ancestral property. You know, women had no right over ancestral property. But today, both daughters and sons of Nepal have equal rights over ancestral property. Okay, we have domestic violence act now. We have law in that. We did not have human rights, human trafficking law then. We have that now, and we have laws. The rape law was there, but it had to be amended, and we have slightly more stronger laws and all that. So these things are there, but unfortunately this data is there too, which shows that implementation is not done as it should. And the state of impunity, you know, if you look at the media in Nepal just now, every day you'll see several cases of girls and women being raped, girls as young as, you know, like just toddlers also, you see, and women over 70s also. you see. And then we also have one-stop crisis center that the government of Nepal has created, which wasn't there before, right? And there are lots of cases that keeps on going there. So there are ample documentation, there are ample proof of these violences happening, sexual violences, physical violences, rape, which is criminal act, right? But the state of impunity is such that actually accessing justice is very difficult. You know, what has been very, one bleak hope that has come is when the cricket captain was recently arrested, and also, you know, it was proven that he has committed that rape, which initially denied. But there, what I want to say here is the reason why these things happen is, why was he allowed to roam the world and play for Nepal as a, you know, Nepali cricketer when he was already accused of rape? So these things should be stopped immediately, you know, because this also gives a kind of unseen and you know, maybe not vocally said, but support, aswashan, you know, support to possible perpetrators, you know, like if they can get free, we can get free too. And these are only some cases which come out in the open. You know, I don't know if you had time to read today in the Friday supplement, there's one article that I have written, and there are a few cases I have cited. You know, there's a girl around 22 years old whose father left the minute he heard she was born, daughter. And he actually left with the, in Nepal, you know, as you know, when women give birth to children, then you give them dry fruits, sutkeri ausadi, that's what it said, right? So he had come with dry fruits, but he took the dry fruits and he went back because she was born. The other case is a disabled, a woman living with different abilities. We don't call disabilities now, differently abled woman. Her mother is mentally challenged, and she has another sister who is also living with different abilities. So the father kicked them out. She stayed with the maternal people, and now she's reached an age where she can earn, you see. The reason I'm saying this is important. So because she's a differently abled person, she went and worked in a government school for 2 years, proved that she could do it, and now she wants to get the government, Nepal government quota to get a permanent job there, but she's not getting it because of different intricacies over there. So, and then there's another girl who, she's about 20 years old, and she talked about being sexually molested as she was growing as a child. So, you know, these cases which used to happen then when laws were not there are happening now too. So, why is it happening? And now, from then to now, if you look, see, before 1990 there was monarchy, so everything is to be subdued. But after 1990 and now, if you look in Nepal, so many political parties have come up. The young generation people are also coming in, saying that they're going to do a lot of things. The civil movement is very strong, women's rights movements are very strong, you know. But still these things are happening because the state of impunity is strong, it's camouflaged, and people are not taking seriously how to address these issues.
I wish we had more time to dwell on so many other issues that are yet unpacked in this interview, in this talk alone. Thank you so much for your valuable time and your thoughts. Thank you, Mrs. Sharma, and happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day to you too, Sarah. Lovely talking with you.